Welcome to Reddit Stories Cookie Edition. The best cheating videos on YouTube. If you enjoy this content, be sure to subscribe and turn on notification. Now let's get into the video. IDC what anyone says, revenge cheating was necessary. So this happened quite a while ago, I'd say about 4 years. My then boyfriend, M23, was verbally abusive and he was a player in his own head. At the time thought he was faithful because he said all the pretty lies to my face and hid his shady. For instance, he would constantly be going out of town with his friends and end up at strip clubs, bars, and with prostitutes, but he would say that all of this was for his friends and he had no interest. At the same time, when he would call me, he would make sure I'm at home not doing anything. If I were to go out, he would force me to send photos of whom I'm with, where we are at, etc., etc. Obviously he has trust issues. But I did trust him like an idiot. Later on in the relationship, I'd say like 1 year in, I noticed how we didn't talk as often as before and the sex was as frequent. Which then made me question him, and it turns out I don't turn him on as much as I used to because I gained like 15 pounds. So he decided to go and cheat on me with someone he knew and then proceeded to tell me all of this just to say he can get a hard on and it was my fault for being fat and not pleasing him. Enough. That's when I broke off and decided it's revenge time. I got my body down 30 pounds and toned myself, then made sure he saw me in public with my banging body and fresh outfit. I knew where he worked, so I just went there around his quitting time. And he followed me and caught up to me and explained how sorry and stupid he acted a month before and he wanted me back. Of course I said okay because now the trap is set. My BF has a really attractive friend whom, and to my luck, we all met up that same night. Right in front of my unsuspecting boyfriend, I started to get frisky and play around with his friend. Then when I rubbed my foot into his under the table, I think my BF noticed. So he pulled me aside and started yelling at me how much of a slut I am and yada yada. No matter, I returned to the table unfazed, kissed his friend deeply and passionately in front of him, leaving him shocked and dumbfounded. Then I took his friend by the hand and walked to get a cab for ourselves to go enjoy the rest of that night. My ex followed us and kept trying to convince his friend not to go. While we were waiting for the cab, I turned to my ex and straight up told him that it's his fault for not noticing what a catch I was, and since he was too busy plowing other women for his own amusement, there shouldn't be a problem. He can carry on. And I reminded him that his friend is way more handsome than he and he just lost it about to attack his friend, but we got in the cab before anything could go down. I later on had sex with him and it was fun. And who comes crawling to my apartment after a week of no contact? My dear ex. So I let him in, and we drink and he gets all caught up in our past, how great things were. Except they weren't for me. So I made out with him a bit, gave him some blue balls, and when he asked if we are together, I told him to leave and understand he has lost all of me. It was nice to see him so down since he's a very confident borderline person. In the end I feel much better. I had revenge sex. Until this day he tries to write to me and keep a connection. Down boy, in short, boyfriend cheated on me and was abusive. Said I was too fat to get him turned on anymore, so he cheated, thus leading me to lose the weight, get and plan a revenge plot on his best friend, then ultimately having him beg me to get me back. Then kicking him out and leaving him and his pride whipped. Story 2. Girlfriend, 24F, only makes guy friends for the most part and uncomfortable. She doesn't understand. Help? My girlfriend insists on being able to hang out with guy friends alone, new or old, and says she's never been in a relationship where her boyfriend would cared. She says they just fully trusted her. I'm not usually jealous and I do things to allow me to love myself, like go to the gym and whatnot, but I think it's kinda mess that she can hang out with literally any guy despite their intentions, because her intentions mean more, which is true to a degree. But she's talking going out alone with guys and saying I shouldn't care at all. For example, she says if she goes to a party, gets along great with a guy, they hang out all night, and he gets her number or snap, they should be allowed to hang out and she shouldn't have to introduce us every time this happens because she should be able to have her own friends. Also true. But fair? To a committed relationship? Ike. She of course claims she reads people well and would shut down any advances, but to me it seems she just wants a boyfriend and as much attention as she can get from others too. Because yes, guys can just be friends with girls, but come on. You met a guy on Tinder before us or at a party and he doesn't ever meet me. Why does he give a about the relationship 60% of the time? I want this to work, but I think it's unfair. She's not a jealous person and wouldn't care if I did this stuff apparently, so I can't try and show her how it feels. We literally just fought because she absolutely refused to get rid of a dude that looks like Prince Charming that she very well might have during our breakup multiple times. She said after a long argument, she'd stop talking to him as much but she want to lead him. And that him trying to be controlling and she won't budge. Am I the controlling guy here? Story 3. I, 34M, have regrets after having had to break up with 11 years loving partner. 32F, for not being able to give answers she needed. After 11 years together, my partner needed clear answers. We both want kids now, and she also wanted me to commit to marriage, which I completely understand. I felt unable until now to propose to her. I did purchase a ring, but it never felt perfectly right. But I'm now afraid I lost her and will never be able to find such a loving partner. We got together in our early 20s, and it started with an explosion of passion but also quite a few storms. We had very different backgrounds, and she wanted a very fusional relationship. I valued some independence and keeping or finding new connections with friends and family. I have always had some social anxiety. She also does on some other level, which made things worse. She was easily jealous when I was making plans that didn't include her. I didn't feel listened to. We fought a lot, but when we did, she would often start crying, and my instinct was to protect her rather than making sure I was heard and understood. I wasn't cut off from friends and family, but ended up not fulfilled either. I put her needs before mine, and I felt the relationship was quite unbalanced and ended up frustrated. I also felt like I was lowering my self-esteem. We also had fights where I felt physically constrained, of not leaving the house, and those became mini trauma. I felt dominated as she's very assertive. I mentioned leaving when I felt she crossed red lines, but never actually did for fear of losing her. On the other end, she adored me and granted me with a huge amount of love. She does small gestures every day, loves to nurture me, is incredibly romantic. There is something very beautiful, simple and pure about the love she gives. We moved several times and traveled around the world together, having amazing times. But it was still difficult to project myself into the future, and I avoided thinking or discussing it. After 7 years together, I became attracted to someone else, very different, someone who I felt was I could have more adult discussions, more similar interests. She had her own projects and ideas, and it gave me the strength to leave the relationship. Right after I did, however, my partner slept with someone and I completely panicked. I wasn't ready to lose her. Eventually we talked, and after 2 months of dating again, I moved back with her. We hadn't completely solved all the issues though. She matured a lot and realized she had been way too possessive before. She changed, even organizing a surprise party for my birthday, which is more than anyone has ever done, and encouraging me to see friends. But I still felt guilty and stressed most time I would make plans without her. Mostly because she doesn't do a lot on her end in terms of seeing friends or hobbies, and end up waiting for me a lot. At some point I became quite unhappy and resigned. I couldn't imagine leaving her. She started to ask about future plans and discussing marriage and children. I let her hope that I also wanted that, and it became difficult to avoid. Last year we started seeing a therapist, and it helped with our communication, but I felt depressed mostly because of lockdowns, but also about feeling stuck. I starting to realize I was really hurting her with all this indecision, not being a good person, and yet she stayed there and helped me navigate through this. A few weeks ago, I finally had to give her an answer. She couldn't wait any longer, and I couldn't tell her I was ready for it, so she left. Now I miss her enormously and feel miserable. After she left we talked a few times, and she was still hoping I would go and get her back. I do want her back, but I know I don't have the right to put her through the indecision again. I need to be certain. I started to imagine more positively having children and marrying her. I became even confident we can turn things around and become less defensive with each other, rebuilding trust. On another hand, I can't ignore that I was just not very happy for a long time, even stopped making plans for myself. She's a very sensitive, compassionate and kind person, and I feel like her constant love is something out of this world which I would be insane to miss out on. I also find her beautiful, and we have always had great intimacy. She's always been supportive and makes our home a great place. Now if I don't want to lose her forever, I need to get her back now before it's too late and propose to her. I'm still a bit afraid though of finding myself not completely fulfilled and falling back into the same patterns. Do you have any advice? Thanks a lot for listening.